Goddamn EU regulations. Hi everybody, I'm Jim.
I'm Ryan.
And this is the Concept Crucible podcast.
And today we talk about work.
Yes.
I know it sounds exciting, but it's actually legitimately exciting.
God, I hope not. I mean, I do. I have a really cool job and I like it, but there's a part of me that always wants... There's that part of me that like is still a teenager and wants work to be boring. Mm-hmm. It wants it to be that like awful thing you struggle with. And at the same time, I have a really cool job and I work with really cool people doing neat things. So
I struggle because I equally want a fulfilling job, and I want a job that is so mind-numbingly easy that it enables me to do the things that I want to do outside of work.
Fair.
Which are not, I wouldn't say they're antithetical, but it's definitely one of those things where when I'm bored at work, I hate work, and I don't think about it in terms of, oh, this is just really easy to kind of discharge my duties so that I can go and do the things I want to do. So, yeah. I don't know. I think I need value in my work. If I've learned anything, I'm that kind of person.
I am never bored at work. I always have. So you do curriculum work and administrative work at the college?
Yeah. I do all sorts of interesting things now.
And I do software support for a sort of medium-sized software company here in town as well. Mm-hmm. And yeah, this is I mean, who we want to be, because you're not always where you want to be, and we've talked about that a bunch of times in different sets of terms, and even professionally we've talked about it in the unemployment episode and mm-hmm. in the weird jobs episode that we did. Mm-hmm. You can go find those in the show notes. They're hilarious. Weird Jobs is really funny. I'm so happy with how that turned out.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is what we struggle with, and where we want to get to.
Yeah, I was struggling with it recently. I interviewed for a job, and I'm very critical about my performance. I've identified that I don't interview well, and so when I think back to my performance during the interview, I get very critical of that. And mm-hmm. so I've been thinking, like, this is kind of what's been mulling around in my head in terms of if I want to do well in my job or if I want to do well for interviews. I've been thinking about the kind of person that I want to be that does those things well.
Fair. So Icebreaker.
Yeah.
Who is the coolest person that you've worked with? And in this context, the coolest person, like the person who embodies, or the person or people who embody the kinds of qualities mm-hmm. that you aspire to.
Mm-hmm. In typical Huck fashion, I have two examples, but I know. But in this case, I would say there are two examples because they both bring roughly the same qualities that I'm interested in to the table. They just have slightly different personalities. One's a little bit more dry and deadpan than the other, but they both exemplify. This was not in paid work. This was volunteer work, and
mm-hmm.
it has to do with a board, a nonprofit board. And both of them, when they spoke with a tone or an air of authority. Not authoritarian, like they weren't telling us what to do per se, but it was in such a consulting, advising role that they spoke with knowledge, and it was always slow and articulate. And I'll get to this in a little bit, but they were very smooth on their delivery. Not lawyer smooth, but they were always smooth in the sense of when they delivered, it was measured, it was even, it was well thought out, and everybody listened to them.
Interesting. Mine is a team of people. I work with a lot of really smart, dedicated people, so it's hard to pick. But in support, I work pretty closely with our account management team or our customer success teams, and the level of commitment that they bring is the thing that I admire. Like these are people like there's that gag about support guys and how support guys always get yelled at, but I don't get yelled at. Mm-hmm. They do by clients, and they just tank it, and they keep working for those clients. Mm-hmm. Because it's their job to fight to make sure that things get changed. It's their job to push on behalf of them, mm-hmm. Because we only succeed when they succeed. So it is really interesting to work with people who are so formidable and who bring that level of commitment. And is that sort of level of commitment that I aspire to, even though that sounds really weird. But here we are. Speaking of here we are, where are we sitting now? Where were you sitting? Like you said you interviewed recently.
I would say that I'm still early career. And I mean, I'm starting to transition towards, I want to say mid-career, but I'm transitioning out of that beginning phase, and I want to start laying down those meaningful roots, start gathering the skills and the experience that's going to propel me forward. But I find, it came through in the interview, this is something that was pointed out to me even as much as 4 years ago, and I still haven't yet been able to correct it. I'm a very excitable person, if you haven't noticed from the podcast. And when I start getting excited, I don't want to say my speech breaks down, but it's one of those things where I start talking fast, animated, which is good in some context, but in a business environment, it's not the kind of thing that I want to do. Especially because when I get excited, I also have the issue of my brain gets moving faster than
you huckle it. You described huckling it before, where you get your words get ahead of your brain.
Yeah, everything gets ahead of my brain, and it's one of those things where I'm trying to determine whether or not the person is understanding what I'm saying, and so I'm trying to simultaneously read their body language to see if there is any kind of comprehension or agreement or disagreement. And if I don't yet have those either clear positive indications that they agree or are following along with me, or clear indications that they're confused, it's kind of like when you're talking to, say, I'm going to, say it here, Patricia Marino. When you're talking and you're not quite sure if she's on the same page as your thought process, so you keep talking to see if...
We'll link to Patricia's blog, The Kramer Is Now, in the show notes.
Yeah,
she's a brilliant philosopher.
She's a brilliant philosopher, a brilliant professor, and a brilliant teacher. But it's incredibly intimidating when you're trying to explain something to her, whether in a presentation or whatever, and she's mulling the ideas around in her head, but you feel like she's giving you a look like you don't know what the hell you're talking about, and so you keep talking at her, hoping that something sticks.
So I have experienced that look, and my response to it is the opposite. I know at that point that I have gone off the rails, and I start dialing it back.
Yeah, I haven't learned that lesson.
That was, I got to do a whole term of that in grad school. It was great.
So that's kind of where I am right now in the context of this conversation.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, the gig that I'm at right now is my first time working as part of a team, where I have people who look to me for, guidance and institutional knowledge and things like that, and I in turn look to others. But like I'm a senior member of my team now, and it's weird. Like I feel this sense of I feel a very real sense of responsibility, but because I've never been in that spot before, I'm not sure like how responsible actually am I versus where do I set my expectations on how much do my teammates need to be responsible for themselves. And to be fair, my team is rad, and again we work our asses off, but there's sort of weird levels of accountability there that I can't compute at the moment. Like I don't like part of me is like one day I wind up in management. I'm like that's weird. We'll figure that out. So where do we want to go from here? Like what are the sort of, and you parse this in the pre-show as the traits that you want to adopt, like not specifically like direction of career, but you want to be able to talk cleanly. You don't want to huckle it, which as a phrase I regret using now.
It's. When I try to wrap my mind around it, I try to think of things that I can do or practice in order to get better at. So I don't want to become a person I'm not per se, but if I want to talk about speaking with a sense of authority, there are certain speech patterns in there that I think I can do. I can practice. I can get feedback on, asking people to help me out with that. In the pre-show, I basically said that I want to speak like Jean-Luc Picard.
He did.
And
I repeatedly mentioned that Jean-Luc Picard is a character played by an actor who's reading from a script.
Yeah. And so, and I recognize the kind of the shortcomings of that ideal, that perhaps it's a little bit too much of a stretch. But I always think about, and I wish I would have looked up the episode name, but they're prosecuting, or it's basically a witch hunt for, a saboteur on the Enterprise,
mm-hmm.
and they end up, putting this a person who claims to have heritage of half Vulcan, but actually it's half Romulus or half Romulan, and the Romulans are still kind of shady, not really allies, not really enemies of the Federation. And it's a little bit of a witch hunt, and people are all into that, and Picard takes the stand, and he gives the famous, forged chain speech, which, has a place within the show. But basically the idea there is speaking in measured, even tones, without getting excited, without getting angry, but he's able to convey all of the things that you need to understand in order to understand his point. And he's speaking to the audience more so than anything else in this regard. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of person that I want to be. I want to be somebody with that sense of authority, but that's clarity of thought, able to express those ideas clearly, concisely, so that other people can understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I crave the opposite of that. When I am speaking as an authority on matters, people are always like, "Well, does this thing work?" I'm like, no, it's just no. For me, like my relationship is primarily with my work. It isn't with my team. It isn't with my coworkers. It isn't with clients or management. My relationship is with the things that I have in front of me, mm-hmm. and that is both an excellent thing and a hindrance. Like what it is excellent because all it means is that as long as I bring a level of commitment to work every day, I am on the ball, mm-hmm. and I am just cooking. Mm-hmm. But it makes it hard to adapt to new processes, new technologies, new procedures, things like that. Like mm-hmm. hey, we want to do something different. And I'm like, no. I have mastered all the tools that I have. Mm-hmm. I can do what you want me to do with these existing tools. It is just less efficient and less reliable in a lot of cases. Mm-hmm. And so that is the thing is once I establish that relationship, I find it really challenging to go outside that. Mm-hmm. So I get stuck in. I'm the conservative office guy who's like, well, listen, we have done it this way and it works. Mm-hmm. Like that, it has to work. If it doesn't work, then we need new tools. Mm-hmm. But if it works, then I can make it work. And this blossoms in all kinds of ways, like the fact that at work I can find a weird software workaround for just about anything, because I know what's in my toolbox and I know all the pieces to it. But as soon as I get outside my wheelhouse, I'm just like, cool. That seems like what you're doing there seems really neat, and I can totally see the value of it, but I don't know how to do it, and I don't know that I could ever learn.
It's really funny you say that because that connects with something that I just read in Stephen King's On Writing. Section 2 of it talks about assembling your toolbox so that you can carry it with you to do the job.
Yeah.
For him, he was talking about writing, so his tools were, grammar and syntax and use of language, but I think that crosses all sorts of interesting domains.
And we have people who are dedicated to expanding our tools, mm-hmm. and my challenge is in like listening and seeing the value of that.
Yeah.
Like we want to talk about gap analysis and sort of how we get there and how we move forward. Like one of the things that I've started doing is I have become the early adopter. Anything new policy, new procedure, new tool, I'm the first one to be like, hey, give me that. Let me try it out. Let me just do it for 2 weeks. I will let you know if it works or not. And I will let you know how well it works and whatnot. Because I'm like immediately I get that feeling where somebody's like, well, we could do this, and I get that feeling that's like that grognard feeling where you're just like, pfft. And I'm like, whoa. Because the person sitting across from me is as good at their job as I am at mine. In some cases, they are as good at my job as I am at mine. And, if not better. And if they think this is going to work, like the degree of commitment that I bring to my work needs to include a degree of like that same degree of respect for their expertise. So it means not just listening, but investing in listening. And the result is that I have learned a bunch of cool new stuff, and I still have a whole lot to learn, like a giant mountain of JavaScript. I just gotta find something to do with it. I haven't thought of anything to do with it yet because I'm bad at it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can do math. I can make it do math. That's about it. What about you? Where you want to Picard it up?
Yeah, I alluded to this before. I think if I can give close friends clear direction in terms of the kinds of behaviors I want them to either watch out against or watch out for,
Yeah, what should I police you for on the podcast?
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's one way of going about it in terms of let me know when I'm starting to, increase my cadence and speak really fast, excited, it's...
Spoilers, we like it when you're excited.
No, I know, and that's the thing is I struggle with that is being excited is not just endearing, but it's also often an effective tool for communicating, and I don't want to necessarily drop that altogether. But in a professional setting, the kind of person that I want to be is a little bit more deliberate. And I think that also is part and parcel with the other side of how I get there is I need to learn to slow down, think things through, and don't allow my brain to jump around to multiple options. It's almost like I need to wear down a really good neural pathway so that the brain moves to the good ideas.
So it sounds like parsing it away from like the idea of speaking with authority. It sounds like what you want to do is you want to make when you're speaking, you want it to be more intentional.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good way of putting it. Speaking intentionally and almost an economy of words. Try to convey ideas in as few words as you need to use.
Yeah, I go for maximal sass. Is my jam.
And I just tend to throw words like candy in a parade.
We're so close.
I know. Do you have a thing to plug it in, or are we just going to finish it?
No, we're just going to finish it audio only. So the battery in our camera just died.
Yeah,
we've been watching it flicker for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, we need to get a plug cable for. I
need a second battery pack. We just got the new camera, so it is still not without issue, but it's my own fault for not charging it.
The worst part is a third episode that we've filmed with this where we're not going to have a complete picture out of it.
Regardless, I think you marked down and like just to finish this off. The last note you wrote down on our sheet is to be kind to yourself. Because you mentioned that you had an interview recently and it makes you super critical.
Yeah,
I am often in the same boat where I'm like, I work and we work all, like not in a vacuum but pretty close to it. Like I've got my own stuff that I'm working on and it is hard to see whether or not I am doing a good job. Which is why we have meetings and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's hard to get visibility into that, and it's hard to feel like that. But it's nice to get that parsed out. It's nice to see that, and it is I think important to, especially when you feel like you're under the gun, give yourself the benefit of the doubt. Like barring strong criticism from people around you, again, who are people on which you rely, it is worthwhile to give yourself the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I think in my case, yes, I tend to be incredibly critical of myself. Sometimes I'm accused, and I think rightfully so, of being very critical of other people. But in this case, with the interview, I come out of it being very, very critical of myself. In some sense, it's almost like I finally recognize my potential, and when I fall short of that, I know that I can do better.
Yeah.
But the thing that I think would help me to be kinder to myself is to realize that, okay, I understand my potential. I know that I am in either some universe capable of doing better, or in some way I can change my behavior so that I can do the things that I would want to do ideally. But by not really setting out any kind of, and I talked about this in the interview, setting yourself key performance indicators to allow you to know whether or not you're actually on the right track, that you can measure your progress through there.
If you don't have goals, you can't fail, but you can't succeed either.
Right, and so you can't really
My therapist told me that.
Yeah, you can't be critical of yourself if you're not also intentionally knowing where you want to go. So I can say, well, I performed really badly on that interview, but you have to be kind to yourself. Well, what did you expect otherwise? You can't just have this vague sense that I could have done better. How could you have meaningfully done better? And then you can start making your progress towards it. Well, if I know that I speak really quickly, then that's something I can practice, and I can be kind to myself in that way. That I'm not unduly harsh on myself, unless I'm intentionally avoiding the things that I want to be my mile markers along the way.
What we're saying is you're actually probably a super kick-ass person.
Yeah, sometimes. I try.
Oh, but that'll finish us up for today. You can find us on social media. You can find us on Patreon. So we have a Patreon now. You can find us on SoundCloud for as long as SoundCloud is alive, where we are doing a cover song every month. And you can also buy the Woodsuit Riot album, which Ryan is not on, but I am. And all those links are in the show notes. And in the meantime, I'm Jim.
I'm Ryan.
And we're signing off.
Stay, I don't know, dark on YouTube, but otherwise, stay awesome.
Yeah, stay awesome. So I don't know what kind of footage I'm going to put in front of this, but I'll figure it out. I'll find another classic movie or something funny.
Yeah. Were those all in the public domain? I hope so.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Okay.
I wouldn't use non-public domain stuff. I was going to pull up some live stream footage from the ISS, but I'm like, ripping live stream footage? I'm not sure about the
ISS, the International Space Station?
Yeah.
Really?
The ISS has a live stream.
Okay, so I wasn't just joking around and picking the first thing I could think of.
No, the ISS has a live stream.